We're live. Okay. Oh, Mike's this way. Ooh, this will be tough. Mike is here. Camera's there. Hopefully that picks up. I forgot to adjust the volume. So anyways, we're going to dive right into this because I've gotten 311 messages on, hey, Trevor Bauer just came out with a video on heel connection, and he said that you, Robbie, are an idiot. No. That wasn't said. All right, so yeah, the heel connection video, I actually watched that within like the first 20 minutes. Here's my thing. I gotta say this before we dive into this. I don't know how long this video is gonna be, but I need to adjust my chair. I love what he's doing. I think he's great for the game. I think he's one of the most intelligent baseball players out there, from not only like the mechanical side, not only the marketing side, but there's so many different things. So now that I got that out of the way, I want to give my 2 cents on the actual video. I'll be completely honest. I think I agreed with every single thing that he had mentioned about it, especially the identification of the individual, right? Like that is the most important piece. And that is kind of like why, I guess, pretty good segue into why I wanted to come up with that, the accelerators and drivers conversation about like, what is the goal of your delivery? Like, what are you trying to do? And then why are you trying to do that? Now, obviously the goal is to produce as much power output as possible, right? We know the importance of velocity in today's game. Every single one of us, including myself, the goal should be to throw hard. Now, okay, now we have a goal, but now the process in which how to best obtain that goal is different for every single person, right? Like he even mentioned it about every person's body type. Like that's the process in which I think doesn't get emphasized enough, because there's so much to do with the instructor that's with the individual needs to be good at seeing physical limitations and like restrictions, essentially, okay? Because that's the whole like kind of cookie cutter approach to pitching mechanics. Hey, Trevor Bauer does this, why don't you just do that? Or hey, Jacob deGrom does this, why don't you do that, right? So like that's kind of the easy way out of teaching pitching mechanics, right? And just showing people a video of Chapman and being like, hell, he does X, Y, and Z, just do that. Now, the tough part, and this is why I think I wouldn't even put myself in that category, honestly, like there's a very, 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 very select few people who are well equipped from totally like so many different components of human movement, biomechanics, and being able to like see that over and over again in someone's delivery and then be able to like relay information. There's so many pieces to that, but that's where a lot of people go, I would say, wrong, is they don't do the greatest of jobs in truly personalizing pitching mechanics towards somebody. Does that make sense? Like I probably do like 5 mechanical analysis a day, and every time like all 5 of those are going to be different. Now, it would be easy for me to say, hey, this person, his heel disconnects early, just, hey, heel connection, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that would be easy, but that's not necessarily the case. Like for me, the whole accelerators and drivers thing, like that was a pretty good outline as far as like identifying one would be your body type, how quickly you can move, how efficiently you can move. Are you trying to produce mass amounts of energy and force into the ground, or are you trying to get going, towards like home plate, like accelerate as quickly as you can, like a deGrom who's, his leg lift, he's initiating forward move, or like a Max Scherzer who's not really getting going until his descend from his leg lift, he's producing mass amounts of force into the ground, blah, blah, blah. That's a really good kind of, well, in my opinion, that was kind of a baseline. Now, it's not perfect by any means, but it's a baseline. Now, this is where I would say the heel connection terminology comes in, because if you guys have been following me and listening to my stuff for a while, you know that that's kind of something that I've used. Now, the reason why I've used it a lot, because of my personal experience, my personal feedback, my personal like sensations that I get when my emphasis from my own personal throwing sessions is heel connection, right? So for me, I've noticed better stability, right? We talk about, I think Bauer even mentioned it, something about like the ankle inversion, eversion, the stability of the ankle then kind of allows that drive leg to be more stable. We want stability within the delivery. You see a lot of younger guys that lack that stability, especially in the drive leg, and you know, a lot of things downstream of their delivery break down due to that. So something that I've noticed with myself and kind of dealing with clients remotely is just like, hey, what does it feel like when I give you this cue, right? Like, does that clean things up? Okay, now in this video, I'm thinking connection. Okay, that may be a window of mechanical efficiency that we get from a terminology such as heel connection, right? Maybe a little bit better stability in that foot, and so on and so forth. He also mentioned something about he's inverting his ankle. He has the ability to do that exceptionally well. I've done a lot of breakdowns on that. That's not something that I can even accomplish, nor can a lot of people accomplish. So in that regard, like, that's another screening aspect of it in terms of like your ankle movement capacity. Can you hold ground connection for that long and then invert your ankle and then take your direction? Now, I would say like 80% of people that I work with are not able to accomplish that move. So then, like me, kind of disconnect from that disconnect the heel early. That back knee will start to kind of leak forward. I guess I wouldn't even say leak, just kind of go forward. And then you have this kind of misdirection almost, but then somehow, some way, depending on the athlete, you make up for it somewhere else. Right? You make up for that kind of loss of potential power output going in that linear direction somewhere else. Maybe it's a separation thing, maybe it's an arm speed thing, who knows? But there's so many components to like the delivery, and I guess I won't even get into that. So, yeah, the other thing that he had mentioned as far as like the goals, I think he was talking about this when he was talking about like the desired goal of the athlete as far as direction. Now, this is where I think I've seen a pretty good amount of success when thinking about heel connection, which I would even put in the category of like, you know, maybe a little bit better hinging. Everyone is going to perceive terminology different, okay? And I would never say that cue or this phrase is wrong or right. The only person who can justify like if it is correct or incorrect or optimal or suboptimal is the athlete you're dealing with, right? So I've thrown the terminology heel connection out to people who do struggle with getting a little bit better at hinging at the hips, right? So they lack that hip hinge movement. So then they have this total misdirection of like their hip rotation goes out and then comes back around. Then they have this crossfire and they lack separation. They lack hip shoulder separation due to the hips then having to rotate essentially in line with the way that the trunk rotates because of this misdirection. I should have done this video, now that I'm thinking about it, on a screen so I can give you some visuals, but I've done a lot of videos on that. One particular video, I would say, if you're confused at that like visual I'm trying to paint, go to my YouTube, and I believe it's misdirection limit separation. And that could paint a pretty good picture in your mind as far as like what I'm talking about, because that is another thing that I see with guys who, and this isn't, I guess I wouldn't even put this category or this in a category of heel disconnection or heel connection, because that's just an athlete or individual's inability to accomplish like a simple movement pattern, which is hinging at the hips, right? So again, no cue is like wrong or right. Now, if the athlete, which I've seen multiple times, an athlete takes heel connection, I know you can't see it, but all of a sudden, now that he thinks about connecting at the heel, pressing into the heel, now all of a sudden what happens with his hips is we go from like this to then whoop. Now we have better direction towards our desired target with that hip load, right, going this way. And in my opinion, that actually optimizes your separation, in which I believe Bauer alluded to as well. Like, you know, I love how he simplified it as far as these little, or these like 3 or 4 things are the biggest freaking hitters in terms of power output. Separation is absolutely one of them. Again, I've seen a lot of limited amounts of separation due to, again, this is tough because it's a hip hinge movement pattern and the inability to establish that motor control rather than just disconnecting from the heel. But with that being said, heel connection will then sometimes allow that athlete to feel a little bit better hinging pattern and create a window of opportunity there to then maybe hammer progressions, hammer variations to then instill that motor pattern. So what was the last thing I wanted to say? I got to do a bit better job of like writing down exactly what I'm going to be talking about, because there was another thing that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to like pat the chest on this because I actually have misused heel connection on numerous occasions. I realize I haven't done this a whole lot with my videos, is like actually say out loud that I have been wrong because I want to make sure that that's on the record. Like, I've been completely wrong with dealing with clients and dealing with people. Like, that's just the nature of the beast, man. But again, I think there's so much to do with constant, maybe like trial and error process with, hey, what does it feel like when you think this, right? So then the athlete can do a lot better job of then being intentional with the sensations and the feedback that he's getting from his body. Because at the end of the day, in my personal opinion, the only thing that matters is like, is the athlete creating a better environment to understand the way that he moves? Because that is going to be the first thing before the athlete can then determine that goal of what he is trying to do within his delivery, right? Yeah. There's one more thing. Now I can't remember. Yeah. Well, next time I'll be sure to write things down. But just a quick little recap there of a video that took longer than it should have taken. Is I agreed with everything. Oh, that was the one thing, was that I actually made a video on this because I was so adamant about heel connection. Like, I thought that was all you needed, man. Like, heel connection. Trust me, I was that guy. I pat the chest. But I did a video on this, is late hip rotation, right? So like, I think I forced bad patterns upon a lot of people in the way that they were perceiving my information online. So then what happened was they were thinking so much about heel connection and staying connected. So remember how when Bauer talked about inverting that ankle, like if someone doesn't have that ability, then they're gonna come up, right? And then that's gonna rotate. Let's see if I can get it. So like, instead of that, it's that, right? So it's like turning. Okay, so yikes. So what I saw from that was a lot of people then were super late to then rotate the hips. So in terms of leaking power output, that's huge, because if we're late with our hip rotation, then we're not able to segment separation. We're not able to get these segmented to create that stretch, because we're so focused on staying connected and grounded with our heel, that then your hip rotation is extremely late. Then you don't create that separation. Then your hips and your trunk and your hips then move together, right? Instead of anchoring down at front foot strike and then snapping that rubber band. So that is 100% one thing that I saw a lot of, and that's why I did make a video on it, in terms of like late hip or too much like emphasis on heel connection can then actually hurt you in terms of getting those hips rotated too late. So I don't know what video that was called. I'm sure you can find it somewhere. I have a playlist on YouTube. There's probably 500 videos on there. Pitching Mechanics playlist on my YouTube channel. Check that out. You'll find it somewhere in there. But yeah, that's another thing that I kept seeing. In terms of like where I would say, if you're watching this and thinking like, okay, well, I would say play around with it, right? Like play around with the concept and the idea of, all right, I'm going to just take a few reps and I'm going to keep heel connection, or I'm going to dig that heel into the ground and I'm just going to see what that feels like. And again, what is your desired goal? I think that's why like getting your mechanic screened, I'm not going to be the guy that does like a shameless plug saying sign up for your analysis, but that's why getting your mechanic screened is so crucial, because like if you don't know your goal of your delivery, then all you really have is like the end goal of like velocity development or command. You got to have those like kind of steps in between to take. Because if you are someone that thinks you can benefit from like actually getting into a better hinging pattern and optimizing the direction of that hip load, then maybe that's something that you can play around with. Now, if that's not the case and there's other lower hanging fruit there for you, who knows? But yeah, I love how he mentioned like Carrasco, and I forget the other individual that he named, but he said like those guys didn't do it and they threw 100. That's the beauty of throwing a baseball, man, is, you know, something in your delivery doesn't look like somebody else's, but like they both throw 100 and they both do one thing exceptionally well, right? And then that's the coolest part of it. And then that's the confusing part of it too, because then if like you have somebody that does something exceptionally well, but then you optimize one of the things that they don't do well, and now the thing that they do exceptionally well kind of goes down just a little bit, and then they just do that well, and then like it's, whoa, I lost 5 miles an hour, but my mechanics on TV, or my mechanics when I look at video, look better. So, oof, yeah, good luck. Go get them. I'm holding a minor league ball for a reason. I would encourage every single one of you guys to listen to, that's not going to focus. That's frustrating. Listen to someone like, yeah, Bauer's, dude, I think he has he moves probably the best on the mound, because he does a lot of things extremely well. But there is something to say from like the movement capacity standpoint, like you might have physical restrictions, right, from maybe like an anatomical standpoint that are prohibiting you from moving like a guy like Trevor Bauer or a Aroldis Chapman or a Jordan Hicks, guys that do it at a high level. So then you need to tailor your delivery to you and you only, right? But that, again, we go back to like that identification process. And that's why screening, mechanical screenings, movement screenings are so important, for you to give a really good understanding of your body, how you move, what you do well, what you don't do well, things you need to work on, things you don't necessarily need to work on, and how to all put that in a nice little bow to then optimize your throw. Okay, that was a really long video. I'm cottonmouthed now. I need water. My computer just died. Okay, yeah, go check out all the things that I just mentioned. Anything else? I don't think so. Rake Baseball Company. Blue light blockers. I'm wearing Cincinnati Red shorts. Ha ha ha. Unintentional. Diamond in the rough hat. Go to the description of this video. I'll try to include the links if I find them. All right, gotta go. Love you guys. God bless. See ya.